Me 27 male, fiance 26 female, my father 52 and my mother 50. Like many who've had something like this happen, I never thought something like this would happen to me, but here we are. My fiance and I met in her freshman year of college. After lots of hanging out at school, we started to date. I have a close-knit family, as did she. So we told our families right away. I'd met hers plenty of times when dropping her off, and vice versa. Both of our families accepted each other with open arms, and our relationship grew. After graduating, we both got jobs and moved in together. After living together for about 3 years, I proposed, and we have been planning our wedding ever since. Now on to the part you're all reading for. Looking back, there was plenty of things I overlooked that I just wrote off, thinking my father was just trying to welcome my ex into our family. Things like my father calling her all the time, and if I was around, they would just tell me they were talking about the upcoming family party or something along those lines. One time she was in the shower and her phone rang. I seen it was my dad, so I answered, and when he realized it was me, he sounded both upset and surprised that I picked up. I then asked, "What's up?" He responded that he wanted to talk to my girlfriend about my mother's birthday that was in a week, and after a minute, we ended the call. Even typing this out now, I feel like an idiot for not seeing it sooner. On the day I found out, it was like any other day. My girlfriend had Thursdays off, so she made breakfast for both of us. When I set out for work, she gave me a kiss and told me to have a great day. During my drive to work, I realized I'd forgotten some paperwork. I shrugged it off and told myself I would just go home at lunch to get it. My girlfriend texted me throughout the day talking about all the casual stuff a couple talks about. Like, what do you want for dinner? I did the laundry. Do you want me to hang it up for you? Blah, blah, blah. I didn't think it necessary to text her that I was coming home for lunch, so when it came around, I just left work and went home. When I got home, I noticed a car that looked like my father's in our parking lot, but I didn't think anything of it and just parked and went into our building. When I opened the door, I was met with a scene out off a movie where a man comes home early and catches his spouse cheating. Such a cliche. There was a trail of clothes, both his and hers, leading to my bedroom. Then the sound of faint moans echoed through my apartment. I stood at the door in utter shock. My brain was a mix of rage, sadness, and disgust. But if you were a fly on my wall, you would see what looked like a statue, because I just couldn't move. When I finally snapped to, not knowing how much time had passed, I took out my phone to record. I picked up all the clothes that were on the floor and threw them into the hall of the building. After, I filmed the walk to my bedroom. The door was open. I stood in the doorway filming for about a minute, then flipped on the lights. They both jumped at the sudden light and looked at me. To my utter shock, it was my father in the bed with her. After the initial stun, my father noticed I was recording and started to panic, trying to find anything to cover himself and telling me to stop recording. He found a towel and wrapped it around himself and started to walk toward me. I told him, "If you don't want to get hurt, stop coming to me." He either didn't care or didn't hear me and reached for my phone. I hit him square on the jaw. His head bounced off the door and slumped to the ground. My girlfriend shrieked. I aimed the camera at her and said, "Concerned about your lover, but nothing to say to your fiancé?" My father woke up after about a minute nap, and I told them that I just needed to come pick something up for work, so I'm heading back now. If either of you pieces of trash are here when I get back, I'll send this video to everyone you know. I ended the video, looked at my dad, who was still coming to, and said, "You're dead to me. You're no longer my father, but you might want to go home and talk to Mom because I'll be talking to her very soon." I sat in my car for a while until one of the bosses at work called to ask where I was. I told her I was on my way back right now. When I got to her office to hand her the paperwork, I must have looked awful because she started asking what was wrong with me. I told her it was nothing and I'd be okay. I could see her scanning me up and down, and she noticed some blood on my collar. She stood up, rushed to me, and said, "You're bleeding." I looked down and said it was my father's. She looked confused, so I pulled out my phone and showed her the video. She watched it in its entirety. She was introduced to my girlfriend a few times, but never my father. She sat there silent for a moment until it finally clicked that my fiancé was cheating on me. But not only was she cheating, it was with my father. She asked if there was anything she could do, suggesting I take some time off. But I told her I can't go back there right now. That I just need a minute and I'd be fine for the meeting, and that I had another shirt in my office. The meeting went over fine. I put on a smile for everyone like nothing had happened. My boss came up to me after the meeting and asked how I could do that, but I just said I don't know and went to my office. I then came home and I was alone for the first time in a very long time. I defiantly need to get the hell out of this apartment. I just can't live here anymore, And there's no possible way I'm sleeping in that bed. Not only do I have to go get checked out for STDs, but I think I broke something in my hand. After all that happened, I kind of fell into a depression. To the ones who think it's fake, I wish I was this creative I'd write books instead of working a 9-to-5 job. So, the day after I found my girlfriend and my father together, I tried to get into contact with my mother, but none of my calls were connecting. I wanted to see if she would get lunch with me, and I'd tell her everything. After about a dozen tries, I decided to get into my car and go to my mother's house. She needed to know what happened as soon as possible, even if talking about it was going to make it hurt all over again. During the drive, I thought about what I would say and how I would say it. That made me start to panic, and I had to pull over twice to throw up. It's not every day you have to tell your mom that her husband is screwing your fiancé. I pulled into the driveway and sat in my car for a moment to calm down and gather my thoughts. I was in my car for a few minutes when my mother threw her front door open, so I stepped out of my car. She started cursing at me, saying, "How dare I come to her home after I hit my father for trying to break up a fight between my girlfriend and I." She called me every name in the book and called me an abuser. She told me I needed to leave since my girlfriend isn't ready to forgive me yet, and that if she's smart, she hopefully never will. Yes, apparently my father took my girlfriend to my family's home and told my mom that her and I argued, and when my father tried to stop it, I hit him. She continued on for a while until I finally snapped and said, "Really, Mom? Because your husband is screwing my fiancé. That's why I hit him. And if you can't take my word for it, I have a video. I'll send it to you. But because my own mother can talk to me like this, don't expect to see me again. I don't want to hear your apology when you finally figure out that you're just as bad of a mom as my piece of trash father." Her face dropped. She looked like what I must have looked like when I first walked into my apartment and caught them. I pulled out my phone and sent her the video. My mom took hers out and turned it on. She pulled up the video and watched up until the part where I turn on the light. She then put her phone down and she looked up at me, but I turned and went into my car. I backed out of her driveway. I looked at her before I took off and she was in tears. My heart felt for her, but too much was said during that fight for me to pull back in and forgive her. I texted my ex's parents and told them I'm calling off the engagement and that she's been cheating on me with my father. They were kind and supportive, so this just added more hurt to the mix. When I got home, I started clearing everything out of my apartment. No one knows where I live now. I've been getting absolutely flooded with calls and texts from my ex-girlfriend, my mother, and my father. I've ignored and blocked all of them. In the past 8 months, I've been nowhere near okay. So I pulled back from everything and I secluded myself in order to heal and cope with what is now my life. A little over a month ago, I unblocked my mother and reached out. I called and almost instantly she picked up. I could tell through the tone of her voice she was panicking. I told her we should meet and talk. She agreed, and a day later, we met at a diner near her house. When I sat, she apologized over and over again, telling me she could only take their word because she never thought them getting together would ever happen, and she just let her anger take over. I accepted her apology, but not wanting to go back and forth, I decided to move on, and I said, "Speaking of my father, what have you decided to do with him?" She told me they've been separated, she just kicked him out, and since the day after I sent her the video, she immediately found a lawyer. Then we moved on to my ex. She said that when I drove away, she went back into the house and threw them both out. We talked for about an hour in total, and before I left, I told her I don't know if I could have her in my life again. I then told her I'm willing to work on my relationship with her, but it will be at my pace. She stopped me before I could leave and told me she has to tell me something important. I sat back down and she said my ex is pregnant. My ex apparently showed up to the house and told my mom. She said she didn't know if it was mine or my father's. My ex asked if I had been in touch so she can let me know. Obviously she hasn't, so my mom just sent her away. That's about it for the update. I'm not sure what to do or feel. Thank you for listening to my story.
Oh my God. I heard Rebecca got plastic surgery, but claims it's all thanks to yoga and lemon water.